Good afternoon, everybody. As we speak, Chief Vanek is addressing the Police Commission. With us here today is Deputy Chief Lisa Mann. We also, FBI Special Agent in Charge Steve Merrill can't be here. He is in Washington, D.C. at the moment. You should have copies of the indictment that we just got sent up from Circuit Court. Let me begin. The grand jury today indicted Lehua Kalua and her husband Isaac Sonny Kalua for murder, among other supportive charges. Lehua was indicted and charged with the following crimes: 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree, 1 count of hindering prosecution in the 1st degree, 2 counts of abuse of family and household member, 2 counts of persistent non-support, 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor in the 2nd degree. Isaac Sonny Kalua was indicted and charged with the following: 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree, 1 count of hindering prosecution in the 1st degree, 2 counts of persistent non-support, 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor in the 2nd degree. Now, the murder charges are slightly different for the 2 of them. Lehua Kalua is charged both with inflicting the damage that led to the death of their adopted daughter, Isabella Ariel Kalua. She is also charged with being a person who has a duty to care for her daughter, and knowing she has suffered serious injury, did not take reasonable steps by calling either law enforcement or calling medical personnel to help her daughter. She's charged with both ways of proving murder in the 2nd degree. Isaac Sonny Kalua is charged only with the latter way of not murder by omission, as it's referred to, having a duty to act to provide due care to somebody you owe a duty to, and not taking the steps necessary, either contacting law enforcement or contacting medical personnel. Now, because of the heinous nature of this case, the legislature has given authority in very specific instances where we can seek extended term punishment. Murder in the 2nd degree typically carries a punishment of life with the possibility of parole. But this is one of those rare cases where, because of the status of the victim being 8 years or younger, if we are successful in the prosecution, that means we can hopefully get they've both been charged, both convicted, and sent to prison for life without parole. The only other circumstances that typically lead to this are mass murders, murders of a police officer, murders of a prosecutor, murders of a witness. It's very, very rare for this to happen. Now, we are working extremely hard at this. This is a heinous crime. They need to be held accountable for it. And at this point, I want to, really, really congratulate the persistent hard work of the Honolulu Police Department in being patient, in investigating this case day after day, looking for evidence, trying to build this case. So I take my hat off to the leadership of HPD, Chief Vanek, Deputy Chief Mann, but also to the homicide detail, and in particular, Lieutenant Dina Tamis for her work. In addition, the Strategic Enforcement Division of HPD, as well as Specialized Service Division, or the SWAT team, and the FBI's Evidence Response Team. When law enforcement comes together, like HPD did with the FBI, and put in the kind of effort and the kind of work it takes to develop a case like this, it really is the way it ought to work. And we have worked hard with them to try to work out what charges can be done, what evidence can be presented, and we'll proceed with that. So at this time, I'd like to call Deputy Chief Mann up.
Thank you, Prosecutor Ong. Good afternoon. We'd like to thank the prosecutor's office and members who we worked very closely with on this case. For without them, we would not have succeeded. In addition to the homicide detail, patrol, and other HPD divisions that worked on this case for more than 2 months, we'd also like to thank our federal, state, and military partners for their assistance. A special heartfelt mahalo goes to the thousands of volunteers who came out to search for Ariel. Her story and her smile brought the community and island together. While this is not the outcome we had hoped for, we remain committed to our quest for the truth and justice. And again, we'd like to thank Prosecutor Alm and his office for their assistance and their continued hard work. Thank you.
All right, even though cases have been charged today, investigations will continue. This is the way it works in this kind of world. You've got a case already, you keep developing it to make the case as strong as possible moving ahead. So the efforts will continue. Both Kaluas are being held without bail, and we expect that to continue. Do you have any questions?
Steve?
Yeah.
At this point, no remains have been found.
I'm
I'm still confident in being able to prosecute the case if that continues to be the case.
Okay. Well, first, I'm not going to talk about any evidence in the case. That was dealt with somewhat last week, and we will stand silent on that. At the same time, we have done, the prosecutor's office, working with the police, have done, I guess, what you refer to as a no-body case in the past. I did what I believe was the first one in State versus Michael Cattell back in 1988. He was a failed Navy SEAL who had murdered his wife. We never found the body. The jury convicted him of murdering her. Sometime later, Peter Carlisle did a case, I believe it was State versus Lankford. So it's not the most common situation, but it certainly is possible if that's what ends up happening in the case.
Can the deputy chief address the current state of the investigation in looking for remains?
I'm just going to say the investigation is ongoing. We did address the investigation last week. We're going to stand by our statements, but we do continue to address tips as they do come in.
Yeah, Manol.
So does this open up the possibility that Isaac Kalua could get a lesser sentence than Lehua because of there's more charges against her?
Well, murder, even though there are two ways to prove it, you don't give them double punishment. It's charged as one count and it two ways to prove it. If the jury comes back in convicting both, those two counts typically merge. So on the most serious charges, if they're both convicted, it's life without parole. So the fact that she has a couple of more misdemeanors than he does wouldn't make any difference. It's life without parole if they are convicted of the top charge. Yeah. Okay.
Can I follow that one?
Sure.
And just to confirm that with all the charges, I know that I guess what came out today was that there was also some abuse inflicted with the older sister, so that's included in these charges?
We are charging whatever we see in order that we think we can prove. And the abuse involves more than one child.
And that's already
Yeah.
in this list.
Steve? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Would there be any reason to accept a plea agreement from, say, Isaac?
You know, what happens down the road, we don't know. They're both charged at this point. We have evidence to prove the case at this point. How we go forward would depend on the circumstances at the time.
And also, in this type of a case, would there be any reason to bifurcate the case?
Not from our side. You know, this
Well, I
is...
mean, from the judge.
That's up to the defense, whatever motions they want to file, whatever they think is appropriate to sever. We think it's appropriate to, with all the same witnesses involved in it, to bring one case and present that to the jury.
How many different cases of abuse did you find involving Isabella and her siblings? And how many times were police called to the home for those cases?
Again, we're not going to get into the evidence in the case today. It's to announce the charges. And we're not going to go into the details of that.
But were there more instances than the offenses charged?
Again, not going to comment.
Have to ask.
Yeah, of course.
Also, for the layperson, Steve, I know there had been talk, or at least some people have been talking about murder in the first degree, and you mentioned the categories under which that would be the case: mass murder, law enforcement, etc. And
Right.
maybe the layperson would ask, considering the heinousness of this, why not murder in the first degree? Maybe you can explain.
It doesn't fit with the facts of this case. The sentence would be the same as if it were murder in the first degree. You know, there are very specific instances where it can be murder in the first degree, as you know, as we discussed, mass murder, murder of a police officer, as I had done, you know, when I was in this office before. What would make this the equivalent sentence of murder in the first degree is the status of the victim being under 9 years old, 8 years or younger, then an extended term. And the way that works is you have to charge it in the document to give the defense notice of it. The jury is not told of that. So you do the trial, and then if you are successful in getting a guilty verdict, then there's some more evidence to be presented. And then the jury decides whether the judge should have the authority to impose an extended term. So that can happen on occasion. If you can look up the extended term statutes in there for a variety of reasons. So this doesn't happen very often, but I think the legislature recognized that when you have extremely vulnerable victims like that, then extended terms should be a possibility to up the sentence from life in prison with the possibility of parole to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
In all your years of being a judge and being a prosecutor, where does this stand for you?
Well, it really is horrendous facts in the case. Like I said, we're not going to talk about it today, but it's really sickening. And that's why I think it's so important the police didn't give up. They kept working hard day after day for months to develop a case. And I think the community really embraced this situation. And they saw Ariel, they felt compelled, you know, let's go help, let's go search. So we're looking at this to both hold people accountable and bring some closure to this situation.
And do you feel that this is going on, other types of abuse, neglect? Do you feel this is going on in the state? Are you investigating?
Unfortunately, there always is abuse going on, whether it's of adults or children. The more people can, if you see something, say something, call 911 if you hear of abuse going on or you see it. It gives them, even if you don't give your name, tell HPD, call 911, because it gives them something to go on. They can go check a situation out. I'll leave it to Deputy Chief Mann there, but I'm sure she'd echo the idea that the more people can say, the more we can get help.
Absolutely. If there's any concern about a neighbor, a friend, a niece, nephew, whoever it may be, yes, call 911. Give us the direction. Let us go and check it out. I mean, without any phone call to report it, we don't know. Okay, so please, yes, if there's any doubt at all, please call 911 to report it. Concerns.
And, Chief, are you able to tell us whether there were calls to this house before?
That's part of the investigation. I'm not going to go into that. I'm sorry.
Okay, any last questions? Yeah.
I mean, February 8, 2019, is that safe to say that's when the abuse started? Or that you're charging the incident started?
You can
The
look
abuse
at
goes back 2
you can
years.
look at the indictments, right? The two kids were in the house for 3 years. You can look at the indictments to see what we charged. Beyond that, and the dates we included, beyond that, I don't want to comment. Okay, thank you all very much.